Hello listener, if you're hearing this, you can still see daylight. If you're new here, subscribe and comment where you're listening from. This story is about choosing to go down instead of up when the world ended. About spending 180 days in the deepest tunnels under New York City, so far below the surface that you could feel the weight of Manhattan pressing down on you. About learning that darkness is absolute when you're 100 feet underground with no light source. About discovering that the infected aren't the only things that live in abandoned subway tunnels. My name is Marcus Webb, and before the world caught fire and died screaming, I was a maintenance worker for the New York City Metropolitan Transportation Authority. Specifically, I worked in the deep maintenance tunnels, the ones most people don't know exist. The ones that run parallel to and beneath the actual subway lines. The ones that housed the electrical systems, water pipes, ventilation, shafts, and emergency equipment that kept the entire subway system functioning. I'd been working underground for 8 years when the outbreak started. It wasn't glamorous work crawling through tight spaces, fixing broken equipment, checking electrical systems, dealing with rats and water leaks and the constant rumble of trains passing overhead. But it paid well, had good benefits, and I'd gotten used to the darkness. Some people can't handle being underground. The claustrophobia gets to them. The sense of being buried alive. The knowledge that there are millions of tons of concrete and steel and earth between you and the sky. But I'd learned to love it. Loved the quiet of the deep tunnels where you couldn't hear the city noise. Loved the sense of being in a secret world that existed beneath everyone's feet. Loved knowing the hidden geography of New York, the tunnels that connected, the abandoned stations, the maintenance passages that went places the maps didn't show. That knowledge would save my life, and it would trap me in a nightmare I'm still not sure I've woken up from. The outbreak reached New York City on March 8, 2024. I was on shift in the maintenance tunnels beneath the 6th line, somewhere between Grand Central and 51st Street. Deep tunnels maybe 100 feet below street level, the deepest parts of the system, where the bedrock of Manhattan Island was closest, where you could almost feel the island's ancient stone pressing in from all sides. I was doing a routine inspection of electrical junction boxes with my crew, 3 other guys, all veterans of underground work like me. We'd been down there since 0600, working our way through the checklist. Check connections, test voltage, look for corrosion, mark anything that needed repair. The usual. The first indication that something was wrong came at 0847. My radio crackled. Dispatch, calling all maintenance crews, all personnel. We're receiving reports of a major incident at street level. Multiple locations across Manhattan. Stay in safe positions and await further instructions. We looked at each other in the dim glow of our work lights. Major incident could mean anything in New York. Terrorist attack, building collapse, gas explosion. We were used to the city having emergencies. It was part of working here. Should we head up? Tommy Chen asked. He was the youngest on our crew, only been underground for 2 years. Dispatch said stay put. I reminded him. We wait for instructions. We went back to work. What else were we going to do? 20 minutes later, the radio crackled again. This time the dispatcher's voice had an edge of panic. All personnel, evacuate to street level immediately. This is not a drill. Evacuate now. Use emergency exits. Avoid subway stations if possible. Repeat, evacuate immediately. That was unusual. Very unusual. Dispatchers didn't panic. They were trained to stay calm during emergencies. But this voice was shaking. Okay, that's our cue, said Rodriguez, our crew chief. Pack up, we're heading topside. We gathered our tools, secured the junction boxes we'd been working on, and started making our way toward the nearest access point. The maintenance tunnels were a maze. You needed to know the system to navigate them. Fortunately, I knew them better than almost anyone. I'd spent 8 years mapping them in my head, learning every passage, every connection, every way in and out. We were maybe 10 minutes from the nearest emergency exit, a maintenance ladder that led up to a locked hatch at street level on 49th Street. We were walking single file through a narrow passage, Rodriguez in front with the brightest flashlight, me bringing up the rear, when we heard it, screaming, from somewhere above us, muffled by concrete and steel, but definitely screaming. Multiple voices, terror and pain. We stopped. Rodriguez held up a hand. We listened. The screaming continued. Then gunshots. Lots of gunshots. Not the sharp crack of a single pistol, but the rapid staccato of automatic weapons. A firefight happening somewhere on the streets above our heads. What the hell is going on up there? Tommy whispered. Nobody answered because we didn't know. The gunfire continued for maybe 2 minutes. Then it stopped. The screaming didn't stop. It got worse. More voices. coming from multiple directions now, and underneath the human screams, something else. Sounds that didn't quite sound human, guttural, hungry. Rodriguez made a decision. We're not going up. Not yet. We wait this out down here until we know what we're dealing with. But dispatch said evacuate. Tommy protested. Dispatch isn't up there getting shot at. Rodriguez countered. We're safer down here until we know the situation. We find a secure position and we wait. We backtracked into the maintenance tunnels, heading deeper instead of toward the surface. Found a equipment room about 30 feet below the active subway lines, a concrete chamber, maybe 20 feet square, lined with electrical panels and junction boxes. It had a heavy steel door that locked from the inside. We sealed ourselves in. Rodriguez tried the radio. Got nothing but static and fragments of panicked voices. Infected are everywhere. Grand Central is overrun. Don't let them bite you. The infection spreads in minutes. Infection. The word hung in the air of our sealed concrete room. We need to know what's happening, Rodriguez said. Marcus, you know these tunnels better than anyone. Is there a way to get a look at street level without exposing ourselves? I thought about it. There's a ventilation shaft that opens into an alley off Lexington. Vertical shaft with a grating at the top. We could climb it, look out without being seen. Show me. I led them through the tunnels, navigating by memory and the beam of my flashlight. The maintenance system was extensive miles of passages connecting every station, every line, every section of the subway. Most MTA workers only knew their assigned sections, but I'd explored during downtime, mapped it all out. Learned the hidden connections. The ventilation shaft was 10 minutes away. A vertical concrete tube maybe 4 feet in diameter, rising from the tunnels to street level. Metal rungs set into the wall for maintenance access. A steel grating at the top for airflow. We climbed up single file. Killed our lights when we got near the top so we wouldn't be visible from the street. Peered through the grating. The alley was carnage, bodies, lots of bodies. Some were motionless. Others were moving, but wrong, jerky, uncoordinated movements. A woman in a business suit crawled along the pavement, her legs clearly broken, dragging herself forward. A man in a delivery uniform stumbled past, his face covered in blood, moving with that distinctive shambling gait we'd all seen in movies, but never thought we'd see in real life. And the infected were feeding. There was no other word for it. They were hunched over bodies, tearing at flesh, making sounds that turned my stomach. Oh God, Tommy whispered. It's real. The zombie thing is real. We watched for maybe 5 minutes, saw enough to understand that the city had fallen, that whatever this infection was, it had spread through Manhattan in hours, that the streets were death traps. Rodriguez made the call. We're staying underground. No discussion. We go up now, we die. Down here we have a chance. Nobody argued. We'd all seen what was waiting on the surface. We descended back into the tunnels. Started making plans for survival in a world that had ended while we were 100 feet underground. There were 12 of us in total who ended up in the deep maintenance tunnels that first day. Our crew of 4, myself, Rodriguez, Tommy Chen, and a guy named Davis who'd been working the MTA for 15 years, plus 8 other maintenance workers from different crews who'd had the same idea we had. Go down instead of up. Hide in the tunnels until whatever was happening on the surface resolved itself. We gathered in a large equipment room beneath the 4/5, 6 line junction at Grand Central. This room was one of the main hubs of the underground maintenance system, a concrete chamber maybe 40 feet square with 20-foot ceilings. It housed backup generators, electrical distribution panels, water pressure regulators, and emergency equipment. It was designed to be self-contained, to function even if the rest of the system failed. Rodriguez took charge naturally. He was the senior crew chief, had the most experience, and people deferred to his authority. First things first, he said, gathering everyone in the center of the room. We take stock of what we have. Food, water, light sources, tools, medical supplies, everything. We pooled our resources. The equipment room had some emergency supplies. MTA regulations required certain materials to be cached in key locations. We found 20 gallons of drinking water in sealed containers, 30 MREs, meals ready to eat, left over from some emergency drill, a first aid kit with basic supplies, 50 chemical glow sticks, emergency blankets, hand crank radio, but no broadcasts were coming through. Toolkits and equipment. We already had between 12 people. That was less than 2 days of food and water. We need more supplies, Davis said, stating the obvious. There are supply caches throughout the tunnel system. Emergency stations, maintenance lockers. If we can access them, we can extend our survival time. How long are we planning to stay down here? Someone asked. A woman named Sarah who worked electrical maintenance, as long as it takes, Rodriguez said. Could be days, could be weeks, until the military gets control of the situation, until it's safe to surface. We don't know the timeline. We should try the radio again, Tommy suggested. Maybe there are emergency broadcasts now. We tried. The hand crank radio could pick up AM and FM frequencies, but all we got was static on most stations. A few had automated emergency broadcasts, similar to what we'd heard earlier. Remain indoors. Avoid contact with infected individuals. Help is coming, but nothing specific. Nothing useful. 1. Station and news station was still broadcasting, though the signal was weak and kept cutting out. We caught fragments. National Guard deployed to Manhattan. Brooklyn Bridge closed. Infection spreading exponentially. Bite victims turn within hours. Avoid all contact. Then that station went silent too. Just static across all frequencies. We were on our own. Rodriguez organized us into teams. We need to map our resources. There are supply caches throughout the system, but we need to know exactly where they are and what they contain. Marcus, you know these tunnels better than anyone. You lead the exploration teams. Over the next 3 days, we explored the maintenance tunnel network system. The system was vast, 15 miles of passages connecting the various subway lines, running at different depths, some as shallow as 30 feet below street level, others as deep as 150 feet in the areas where the tunnels went under the East River. We found supply caches in equipment rooms scattered throughout the network. Most contained similar emergency supplies: water, MREs, first aid kits, tools. We also found vending machine supplies in some of the larger stations we could access from the maintenance side. Water from pipe condensation we could collect and treat. Electrical power still flowing to some sections of the tunnel. The grid hadn't completely failed yet. Subway trains still running on automated schedules on some lines, their lights visible through the grating that separated maintenance tunnels from active tracks. That last part was surreal. The trains were still running, automated systems keeping the schedule even though there were no passengers, no operators, no one left to care about the subway schedule. Ghost trains, running through the darkness carrying nothing but empty cars. We could use those trains, we realized. They had emergency supplies, food in conductor compartments, water, first aid kits, and they ran on predictable schedules. If we were careful, we could access them. Tommy and I volunteered for the first train raid. We positioned ourselves in a maintenance passage that ran parallel to an active track on the 6th line, waited for the automated train. When it passed, we used an access panel to get onto the platform of an abandoned station, City Hall Station. The old beautiful station that had been closed to the public for decades. But that train still passed through. The next train stopped at the platform. It was programmed to open doors at every station, whether people were there or not. We boarded quickly, grabbed whatever supplies we could find in the conductor's compartment and the cars themselves. People had left things behind when they'd fled: backpacks, purses, shopping bags. We took everything useful. Got off before the doors closed. Made it back to the maintenance tunnel with arms full of supplies. That became our routine. We'd raid the ghost trains, accessing them from abandoned stations or maintenance passages. It was dangerous. The third rail carried 625 volts of electricity and could kill you instantly if you touched it. We lost our first person on day 5 when Davis slipped while crossing tracks and his hand brushed the third rail. He died instantly, his body convulsing for a few seconds before going still. We couldn't bury him properly. Sealed his body in a side tunnel and marked it. 11 of us left. Food and water became our primary concerns. The supplies from the trains and caches helped, but we were consuming resources faster than we were finding them. We started rationing immediately, 1 small meal per day, minimal water. But, even with rationing, the math was grim. On day 10, someone suggested we could catch the rats. The tunnels were full of rats. Millions of them, probably. They'd always been down here, living in the darkness, feeding on whatever they could find. With the subway system shut down, with no more trash and food waste from passengers, the rats were hungry too. They were getting bolder, coming closer to our light sources, scavenging anything we left unguarded. We could trap them, Rodriguez said. Eat them. The idea was repulsive, but we were getting desperate. Our cached supplies were running low. The train raids were becoming more dangerous as some trains had stopped running. Power was failing in sections of the system. We needed another food source. We set traps using materials from the maintenance supplies. Caught our first rat on day 11. It was huge, maybe 2 pounds, fat from years of feeding on subway waste. We killed it, skinned it, cooked it over a small fire we made in a ventilation chamber, where the smoke would be vented to the surface. Rat meat tastes terrible. Greasy, gamey, with a texture that's somehow both tough and mushy. But it was protein. It was calories. It kept us alive. We caught maybe 2 or 3 rats a day between all of us. Divided among 11 people, it wasn't much. But combined with our dwindling supplies, it was enough to stave off starvation. On day 15, we had our first encounter with infected in the tunnels. We'd been assuming they wouldn't come down here, that the infected would stay on the surface, that the tunnels would be safe. We were wrong. A group of myself, Tommy, Sarah, and 2 others were exploring a section of tunnel beneath the Lexington Avenue line when we heard it. Movement in the darkness ahead. Shuffling, breathing, the wet, guttural sounds we'd heard from the surface. We killed our lights immediately, stood frozen in complete darkness. Listening, the sounds got closer. Multiple infected, from the sound of it, moving through the tunnel in our direction. We couldn't see them, but we could hear them. Could smell them, an awful stench of decay and infection. They were maybe 20 feet away in the darkness. We backed away slowly, carefully, trying not to make noise. But Tommy stumbled. His boot scraped against concrete. The sound echoed in the tunnel that the infected sounds changed. Became excited, aggressive. They'd heard us. We ran. Ran blind through the darkness, hands on the tunnel walls for guidance. Flashlights off so the infected couldn't follow the light. Behind us, the sounds of pursuit, feet slapping against concrete, those horrible hungry sounds. We made it to a maintenance door, threw it open, got inside, slammed it shut. The door was heavy steel with a lock. We secured it, listened as the infected threw themselves against it, pounding, scratching, making sounds that weren't quite human anymore. Pounded for maybe an hour before giving up and moving away. We sat in that room in the darkness, breathing hard, realizing that the tunnels weren't safe anymore. The infected had found their way down, and unlike us, they could navigate in complete darkness. They didn't need light. They hunted by sound and smell. That changed everything. Rodriguez called a meeting. We need to go deeper. The infected are in the upper tunnels now, but there are sections they might not reach. Deeper maintenance passages, abandoned construction from old tunnel expansions, places that are harder to access. How deep? Someone asked. There's a section beneath the 7-line extension. Abandoned construction from the 1950s that was never finished. It's at least 150 feet down, accessed only through a vertical shaft. The infected probably can't navigate that. We'd be safer there. Safer but more trapped, Sarah pointed out. If something goes wrong, if there's a flood or a collapse, we'd have no way out. We have no way out now, Rodriguez countered. The surface is overrun. Our only option is to go deeper and wait this out. We voted. 7 people wanted to go deeper. 4 wanted to stay in the current location. Rodriguez broke the tie. We'd go deeper as a group. Safety in numbers. Over the next 2 days, we moved our supplies through the tunnel system to the abandoned construction site Rodriguez had mentioned. It was a brutal journey, miles of walking through narrow passages, climbing down vertical shafts using maintenance ladders, hauling supplies in makeshift packs. The abandoned construction was exactly as Rodriguez had described. A section of tunnel that had been started in the 1950s as part of a planned subway expansion that was never completed. The tunnel dead-ended after maybe a quarter mile. The rock face, where excavation had stopped, still showing drill marks. There were side chambers that had been carved out for equipment storage. Water dripped from the ceiling. The air was damp and smelled of wet stone, and it was deep, at least 150 feet below street level. So deep we could feel the pressure change in our ears. So deep the rumble of trains in the active tunnels above was just a faint vibration. You could barely feel through the rock. We set up our base camp in the largest chamber, created sleeping areas with the emergency blankets, organized our supplies, set up a latrine in a side passage, established rules for light usage. We had maybe 30 chemical glow sticks left, and they needed to last. On day 20, we made a terrible discovery. One of our crew, a guy named Patterson, started showing symptoms. Fever, sweating, aggression. When did you get bitten? Rodriguez demanded. During the run from the infected, Patterson admitted. One of them grabbed me in the dark. I thought it was just a scratch, but he showed us his arm. The wound was infected, badly, dark veins, spreading from it in a spiderweb pattern we'd all learned to recognize. How long? Someone asked. 5 days ago, Patterson said. I thought I'd be okay. 5 days. He'd been incubating for 5 days, and we'd been living right next to him. The debate that followed was brief. We couldn't risk him turning while we were trapped 150 feet underground in an abandoned tunnel with one way in and out. Rodriguez made the hard call. We locked Patterson in one of the side chambers, gave him water and food, told him we'd let him out if he recovered. He didn't recover. 2 days later, the sounds from the chamber changed, became less human, more like the infected we'd heard in the tunnels. Rodriguez and 2 others went in with pipes and ended it, sealed the chamber afterward. 10 of us left, and we were trapped 150 feet underground in the deepest tunnels beneath Manhattan, running out of supplies, running out of light, running out of hope. Day 30 brought our first major crisis. The lights started dying. We'd been rationing our chemical glow sticks carefully from the beginning. Each stick provided maybe 8 to 12 hours of usable light before fading to nothing. We had started with 50 sticks. By day 30 we were down to 15. The math was simple and terrifying. 15 sticks, 10 people. If we used 1 stick at a time to conserve them, we had maybe 120 hours of light left. 5 days. After that, we'd be in complete darkness. We need to find more light sources, Sarah said. She was our electrical expert, had been working on a solution. The active subway tunnels above us still have power in some sections. If I can tap into the electrical grid, I can rig some lighting down here. That means going back up, Rodriguez said, into the sections where the infected are. It's our only option, unless you want to spend the next however many months in total darkness. Nobody wanted that. We'd all experienced what complete darkness was like when we killed our lights to hide from infected. Down here, 150 feet below ground with no natural light whatsoever, darkness was absolute. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Couldn't see anything. Just infinite black that pressed in from all sides. Sarah, Tommy, and I volunteered for the expedition. We'd go back up to the powered sections, find an electrical junction box, and scavenge materials to create a power tap that could run down to our deep base. We left at what we estimated was morning, though time had lost meaning down here. We'd been keeping track of days by marking tallies on the tunnel wall, but the actual time of day was a guess based on when we woke and slept up. The journey back up through the tunnel system took 3 hours. We moved slowly, carefully, listening constantly for sounds of infected. We heard them several times, distant movements in connecting passages, the wet breathing sounds, the shuffle of feet. Each time, we'd freeze, kill our light, and wait in darkness until the sounds moved away. We reached a powered section of tunnel. Beneath the foreline around what might have been noon, the lights were still functioning here, fluorescent tubes running along the ceiling, powered by the grid that was still somehow operating in parts of the system. The sight of actual electric light after weeks of dim chemical glow sticks was almost overwhelming. Sarah found an electrical junction box, started working on creating a tap. This is going to take a few hours, she said. I need to bypass the safety systems, route power through a secondary line, and create a connection point we can run cable from. Tommy and I stood watch while she worked. The tunnel we were in ran parallel to an active track. We could hear trains passing, occasionally still running on automated schedules, though less frequently now. The power was failing in sections. Soon, even the ghost trains would stop. We'd been there maybe 2 hours when we heard it. Not from the tunnels, from the tracks. A train was approaching, but the sound was wrong. Screaming, human screaming, coming from the train. The train came into view through the metal grating that separated the maintenance tunnel from the tracks. It was a 4 train, moving at normal speed, and the cars were full of infected. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, packed into the subway cars like commuters during rush hour, but all infected. They threw themselves against the windows, against the doors. Some had broken through the glass and were partially hanging out. Still moving, still reaching even as the train's momentum pulled them along at 40 miles per hour. The train passed in maybe 10 seconds, but the image burned into my brain. All those infected, trapped on a train that was running an automated route through the tunnels, unable to get off at stations because they didn't have the coordination to work the doors, just riding in an endless loop through the darkness. Jesus Christ, Tommy whispered. They're using the trains. They're in the whole system. Sarah finished her work 20 minutes later. She'd successfully tapped the power line and created a junction point. Now we needed to run cable back down to our base, almost a mile of heavy electrical cable through narrow tunnels. We found cable in a maintenance supply room. It took all 3 of us to carry the massive spool. We ran it back down through the tunnels, unreeling it as we went, securing it to the walls with clips and ties, creating a power line that descended through the maintenance system like an umbilical cord connecting us to the dying grid above. It took us another 6 hours to complete the run. When we finally connected it to the lights Sarah had rigged in our base camp, and she threw the switch, an actual electrical light flooded the chamber for the first time since we'd come down here. Several people started crying. Light, real light, not the dim green glow of chemical sticks, but bright fluorescent illumination that pushed back the darkness, that let you see clearly, that reminded you of the surface world where the sun existed. How long will it last? Rodriguez asked. Sarah shrugged. As long as the grid stays up. Could be days, could be months. The power plant is probably automated, running on backup systems. When those fail, we're back to darkness. We celebrated that night. Used one of our precious remaining food supplies to make a real meal, well, as real as you can make with MREs and rat meat. We kept the lights on longer than we should have, just because we could, just because the light made us feel human again. On day 35 we heard the explosion. Came from somewhere above us. A massive boom that we felt through the rock, through the tunnel walls, through our bones. The lights flickered. Dust rained from the ceiling. The tunnel shook like something massive had impacted the earth above our heads. What the hell was that? Someone shouted. We listened, heard nothing for maybe 30 seconds. Then another explosion. Closer this time. The lights went out completely. Emergency battery backups kicked in, giving us dim emergency lighting that barely pushed back the darkness. The city's being bombed, Sarah said quietly. They're bombing Manhattan. We sat in the dim emergency light, feeling the earth shake with each distant explosion, realizing that the military was trying to sterilize the city, that everything above us was being destroyed, that even if we wanted to return to the surface, there might not be a surface to return to. The bombing continued for hours. Some explosions were distant, barely felt tremors. Others were close enough to shake loose concrete from the ceiling, to make us think the tunnel was going to collapse on top of us. Around what might have been evening, our power line failed. The main grid had been destroyed in the bombing. The lights went out. The emergency backups lasted another hour before their batteries died. Then we were in complete darkness. We had 10 chemical glow sticks left. Rodriguez made the decision to use them sparingly, one stick at a time, only when absolutely necessary. The rest of the time, we'd live in darkness. Complete, absolute, total darkness. If you've never experienced true darkness, you can't understand what it does to you. In the city, there's always some light: street lights, car headlights, building lights, the ambient glow of civilization. Even in the deepest night, you can usually see something. But 150 feet underground, in an abandoned tunnel carved from Manhattan bedrock, with no power and no natural light source, darkness is complete. You cannot see anything. Not shapes, not shadows, nothing, just infinite black that presses against your eyeballs, that makes your brain create phantom images because it's desperate for any visual input. The darkness played tricks on your mind. You'd see things that weren't there, flashes of light, movement in the corners of your vision that vanished when you turned your head. Your spatial awareness degraded. You'd reach for something and misjudge the distance. You'd walk into walls you swore weren't there a second ago, and the sounds became magnified. In darkness, your hearing sharpens to compensate for your useless eyes. Every drip of water echoed like a gunshot. Every breath from the person next to you sounded like a storm. Every small sound became enormous, threatening, terrifying. We tried to maintain routines in the darkness. We'd light a glow stick for meal times, gather everyone together, eat our meager rations, talk to maintain morale. Then we'd kill the light and return to darkness to conserve the stick's life. We slept in darkness, woke in darkness, lived in darkness. By day 45, our glow sticks were gone. We were in permanent darkness. Some people handled it better than others. Rodriguez stayed calm, kept giving orders, kept us organized. Sarah focused on trying to rig alternative light sources. She tried creating makeshift torches from materials we had, but they smoked too much in the enclosed space, and we couldn't risk carbon monoxide poisoning. Tommy started to break down. I'd hear him crying in the darkness, talking to himself, sometimes talking to people who weren't there, his family on the surface, probably dead. His voice would echo through the chamber, desperate and lost. On day 52, someone snapped completely. I don't know who it was in the darkness. Voices became hard to identify, but someone started screaming, just screaming wordlessly into the black. Then sounds of movement, running. The person ran through the chamber in the darkness, crashed into walls, fell down, kept running. Stop, Rodriguez shouted. You'll hurt yourself. The person didn't stop, ran into one of the side passages. We heard them running deeper into the tunnel system, their footsteps echoing and fading. Then silence. We never saw them again. Never knew if they found a way out or died in the darkness. One more person lost to the tunnels. 9 of us left. Food was becoming critical again. The rat traps were still working. We'd set them up in the darkness by touch and memory, and we could hear when they triggered. But catching rats in complete darkness was difficult. Sometimes we'd fumble the kill and the rat would escape. Sometimes we couldn't find the trap we'd set because we'd gotten disoriented in the dark. We were all losing weight. I could feel it in myself, my clothes hanging looser, my belt needing to be tightened another notch, my ribs prominent when I'd touch my chest. In the darkness, you couldn't see the physical deterioration, but you could feel it. On day 60, we heard the tunnel collapse. It started as a rumble, deep, resonant, coming from somewhere above us in the tunnel system. Then a crash that went on for maybe 30 seconds, the sound of concrete and steel and earth falling, crushing everything beneath it, then silence. That sounded close, Sarah said in the darkness. Too close, Rodriguez agreed. Could be the bombing weakened structural supports. Could be water infiltration. Could be the tunnels are just old and failing. Could be our exit is gone, someone else said, voicing what we were all thinking. We had entered this deep section through a vertical shaft maintenance access that required climbing down a ladder for about 80 feet. If that shaft had collapsed, we were trapped down here. No way out. Rodriguez organized an expedition to check. 3 of us, Rodriguez, Tommy, myself, would navigate back through the tunnels in darkness to reach the shaft and assess the damage. Moving through the tunnels in complete darkness was terrifying. We formed a chain holding onto each other's shoulders, the lead person using their hands on the walls for guidance. We moved slowly, each step careful, testing the ground ahead for obstacles or drop dash-offs. It took us 4 hours to cover what had been a 30-minute walk with light. We navigated by memory and touch, by the feel of the tunnel walls. By counting our steps and trying to remember the layout, we reached the vertical shaft, or what was left of it. The collapse had happened here. We could feel it in the darkness. The tunnel ahead was blocked with rubble, concrete chunks, twisted metal, earth and rock that had fallen from above. We felt our way along the pile, trying to find the shaft entrance. It was gone, completely buried under tons of debris. Can we dig through? Tommy asked, his voice shaking. Rodriguez felt the rubble pile. This is at least 20 feet of debris, maybe more. With the equipment we have, which is basically nothing, it would take months to dig through, and the whole time we'd risk causing more collapse. So we're trapped, I said. We're trapped. Rodriguez confirmed that. We felt our way back to base camp. Delivered the news. 9 people, sealed in an abandoned tunnel 150 feet underground, with no way out and dwindling supplies. Someone started laughing, a high hysterical sound in the darkness. Others joined in, not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming or crying, and the laughter felt better. On day 70, we had our first death from starvation. We'd been eating maybe one small meal every 2 days, rats when we could catch them, water from condensation and pipe leaks. But it wasn't enough. We were all wasting away in the darkness. A person, I think it was one of the maintenance workers whose name I'd never learned, just didn't wake up one morning. We found them by touch, their body cold, their breathing stopped. They'd simply run out of energy, their body consuming itself until there was nothing left. We dragged the body to one of the side passages, sealed it off as best we could. We couldn't bury them properly, couldn't do anything except remove them from our living space. 8 of us left. Day 80 brought a discovery that would change everything. I was exploring one of the side passages in darkness, moving by touch along the wall, trying to map out our limited territory in my head since we couldn't see it. The passage dead-ended at what I thought was solid rock face where the excavation had stopped in the 1950s, but when I pressed against it, I felt something. A draft, cool air moving through a crack in the rock. I called for Rodriguez. We felt along the rock face together in the darkness. The crack was narrow, maybe 6 inches wide, but it went deep, and air was definitely flowing through it. There's another space beyond this, Rodriguez said. Another tunnel or chamber. The excavation crew must have broken through into something. Natural cave system, I suggested, maybe, or another abandoned construction. Either way, it means there might be another way out. We gathered tools, pry bars, hammers, anything we could use to widen the crack. Worked in shifts, in complete darkness, chipping away at the rock by touch. It took 3 days of constant work, but we finally opened the gap wide enough for a person to squeeze through. I volunteered to go first. Squeezed through the narrow opening, emerged into space. I could tell by the echo. The chamber beyond was large. The air was different, cooler, moving, carrying scents I couldn't identify. I'm through, I called back. It's a big space. I'm going to explore. I moved carefully in the darkness, hands out, shuffling my feet. The floor was rough natural stone, not concrete. This wasn't construction. This was a natural cave. Manhattan Island is solid bedrock, schist and granite that forms the foundation that allows the island's skyscrapers to exist. But there are natural formations in that bedrock, fissures, caves, spaces carved by ancient water flow. Most had been filled or sealed during construction over the centuries, but some remained hidden beneath the city. I'd stumbled into one. I explored by touch for maybe 20 minutes. The cave extended in at least 2 directions from where I'd entered. One direction sloped downward. I could feel the floor declining. The other seemed to stay level or maybe slope slightly upward. I chose upward. If there was any chance this led somewhere, it would be up toward the surface, not deeper into the earth. The cave passage was narrow in places. I had to squeeze through gaps barely wide enough for my shoulders. In other places, it opened into larger chambers where I could stand upright with arms extended and not touch anything. I moved slowly, marking my path by touch, by memory, by leaving small piles of rocks at intersections so I could find my way back. After what felt like hours but might have been less time was impossible to judge in the darkness. I felt something different, a change in the air. It was moving more strongly, and it smelled different. Not the stale, damp smell of the deep tunnels. Something fresher. I kept going. The passage narrowed again. I had to crawl. Then it opened into another chamber, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 80 days. A breeze. Not just air movement from pressure differences. A real breeze. Fresh air, and something else. Something so faint I almost didn't believe it. Light. Not artificial light. Not the glow of chemical sticks. Natural light, daylight so dim it was barely perceptible even after my eyes had adjusted to months of darkness. But it was there. A faint grayness in one direction that was slightly less black than absolute darkness. I moved toward it. The cave passage led upward now. Definitely upward. I climbed over rocks, squeezed through tight spaces, pulled myself up using handholds I could barely see. The light got stronger. Still, dim may be equivalent to deep twilight, but after 80 days of complete darkness, it was overwhelming. I could see shapes, outlines, my own hands in front of my face. The passage ended at a narrow vertical fissure in the rock. I looked up, saw sky. Actual sky, gray with clouds, but sky. The fissure was maybe 2 feet wide, extending upward for what looked like 20 or 30 feet before opening to the surface. I'd found a way out. I climbed. The fissure had enough handholds and footholds, natural irregularities in the rock. It was tight, claustrophobic, but I forced myself upward. My muscles burned. I was weak from months of starvation and inactivity, but I kept climbing. I emerged into open air on day 80, gasping, my eyes watering from light that would have seemed dim on a normal overcast day but was blinding after months. Underground, I was in Central Park, or what was left of it. The park was overgrown, wild. Trees had fallen. Vegetation had exploded without anyone to maintain it. The city beyond was a ruin, buildings burned or collapsed, streets choked with abandoned vehicles, silence except for wind and the occasional distant sound that might have been infected. But it was the surface, the real world, sky and clouds and air and light. I marked the fissure's location carefully near the north end of the park, partially hidden by fallen trees and overgrown brush. Then I climbed back down into the darkness, back through the cave system, back to tell the others. The news sparked hope we hadn't felt in months. There was a way out. We could reach the surface. We could escape the tunnels. But Rodriguez was cautious. What's the surface situation? How many infected did you see? I didn't see any directly, I admitted, but I heard them in the distance. And the city is destroyed, bombed, burned. It's not safe up there. Is it safer than down here? Sarah asked. We're starving. We're trapped. At least up there we'd have options. The debate went on for hours. Some wanted to leave immediately. Others wanted to stay in the tunnels. At least down here we knew the threats. We had shelter. We had some supplies. Rodriguez made the final call. We scout the surface first. Small team. See what the actual situation is. If it's survivable, we evacuate everyone. If not, we stay down here and keep surviving as long as we can. Sarah, Tommy, and I volunteered for the surface scout. We'd go up through the cave system, spend a day observing the surface, and report back. We made the climb on day 8, emerged into Central Park in what looked like late afternoon based on the sun's position. The park was eerily quiet. We could see the ruins of the city around us. Midtown Manhattan was devastated. Buildings stood like broken teeth against the sky. Some were burned husks. Others had collapsed completely. The bombing had been thorough. We saw infected in the distance, small groups of them wandering aimlessly through the streets, not the massive hordes we'd seen in the early days. Maybe most had died or moved on. Maybe the bombing had killed many of them, but they were still out there. We explored carefully, staying hidden, avoiding contact. Found that much of the park was relatively clear. The infected seemed to prefer the buildings and streets. We found evidence of other survivors' makeshift camps that had been abandoned. Scavenged supply caches, messages spray painted on walls. One message, on the side of a park building, gave us hope. Military safe zone, Governor's Island, ferries, running from Battery Park, Channel 7 emergency radio, a safe zone, rescue. A destination. We scavenged what we could from the park, found some canned food in an abandoned camp, water bottles, a working flashlight with batteries. Then we descended back into the darkness to report. The news electrified the remaining survivors. 8 of us left, starving and desperate, and now we had hope, a way out, a destination, a chance. We spent 2 days preparing, gathered every supply we could carry, created makeshift packs from materials we had, planned our route. We'd go through the cave system to the surface, cross Central Park to 5th Avenue, make our way south through the city to Battery Park, a distance of maybe 5 miles through infected territory. On day 80, we began our evacuation. The climb through the cave system was brutal. We were all weak from months of starvation. Some people had to be helped through the narrow passages. Tommy nearly got stuck in one tight squeeze. We had to pull him through, scraping skin off his shoulders and back. But we made it. All 8 of us emerged into the gray afternoon light of Central Park. We stood there for a moment, breathing fresh air, feeling sunlight on our faces for the first time in 86 days. Then we started moving south. The journey through the ruined city was a nightmare. We moved through streets choked with debris and abandoned vehicles. We saw infected, avoided them when we could, ran when we couldn't. Lost one person on day 87 when a group of infected cornered him in an alley. We heard him screaming as we ran, couldn't go back for him. 7 of us left. We traveled mostly at night, hiding during the day in buildings or under vehicles. We scavenged food and water from abandoned stores and apartments. We saw things I wish I could forget: bodies everywhere, evidence of violence and horror, a city that had died screaming. On day 92, we reached Battery Park. The ferry terminal was there, just as the message had said, and there were other survivors, maybe 50 people gathered, waiting, a military presence, real soldiers with weapons and radio equipment. They took us in, checked us for bites, quarantined us for 72 hours to make sure we weren't infected, fed us real food, hot meals, the first proper nutrition we'd had in months. On day 95 we were transported to Governor's Island. The safe zone was real, a fortified settlement with walls, guards, farms, a functioning society of maybe 3,000 survivors. We'd made it, we'd survived. But we'd left 5 people dead in those tunnels, and I'd spent 86 days in darkness that had changed something fundamental in who I was. Even now, months later, I can't sleep in complete darkness. I keep lights on, even dim lights, because I remember what true darkness is like. I remember feeling the weight of Manhattan pressing down on me. I remember the sounds in the dark. I remember the hunger and the fear and the crushing certainty that we were going to die down there. I survived 180 days during the zombie apocalypse. 86 of those days were spent 150 feet underground in absolute darkness. The tunnels are still down there. The bodies we left behind are still there. The darkness is still there, waiting. Sometimes I dream about going back, about descending into those tunnels, about the darkness closing in, about being trapped again. Then I wake up, and I turn on all the lights, and I tell myself I'm safe, but I know the truth. Part of me is still down there, still in the darkness, still feeling my way through narrow passages toward a light I'm not sure I'll ever reach. I need to go back. Not physically, I'm not stupid enough to return to those tunnels, but I need to tell you what I left out. The parts I couldn't say at first because they're harder to explain. The parts that don't make sense unless you've lived them. Day 40 in the darkness was when we started hearing the voices. It started with Tommy. He mentioned it casually during one of our meals. We'd lit one of our precious remaining glow sticks so we could see to eat our pathetic ration of rat meat and stale water. Did anyone else hear someone calling my name last night? He asked. We all looked at him. What do you mean? Rodriguez asked. I heard my mother's voice, calling me Tommy. Tommy Chen, come home, clear as day. I thought I was dreaming, but I was awake. You were dreaming, Sarah said. Or it was the stress. The darkness plays tricks. Maybe, Tommy agreed. but he looked uncertain. 3 days later, I heard it too. I was lying on my emergency blanket in the absolute darkness, trying to sleep, when I heard my sister's voice, clear, close, like she was standing right next to me. "Marcus, I'm here. I need you to help me. Marcus, please." I sat up so fast I hit my head on the low ceiling. "Rachel, Rachel, is that you?" My voice echoed in the chamber. No response, just the breathing of other people sleeping in the darkness around me. "You okay?" Rodriguez's voice came from maybe 10 feet away. Yeah, bad dream." But it hadn't been a dream. I'd been awake. I'd heard her voice. My sister Rachel, who'd been living in Brooklyn when the outbreak hit, who I hadn't heard from since the first day, who was almost certainly dead. Over the next week, everyone reported hearing voices, dead family members, friends, sometimes strangers, always in the darkness, always when we were alone or when the chamber was quiet. "It's auditory hallucinations," Sarah explained during one of our group discussions. "Sensory deprivation. Our brains are creating input because they're not getting enough real stimuli. It's a known phenomenon. It feels real," someone said. "How do we know it's not real?" "Because the dead don't talk," Rodriguez said firmly. "Whatever you're hearing, it's not actually there. Your mind is playing tricks. Ignore it." But that was easier said than done. The voices continued. They became more frequent, more insistent. Sometimes they'd call you by name for hours. Sometimes they'd have conversations with you, responding to things you said or thought. I started having full conversations with my sister in the darkness. I knew she wasn't real. I knew it was my brain manufacturing her voice, but it felt real, and in the crushing isolation of those tunnels, even a hallucinated conversation was better than silence. Day 55 brought a different kind of horror. We were down to 6 chemical glow sticks. We used them only for essential tasks, preparing food, checking injuries, dealing with the latrine. The rest of the time, complete darkness. During one of these brief periods of light, Sarah noticed something on her arm, a rash, red and inflamed, spreading from her wrist toward her elbow. "Is that a bite?" Rodriguez asked immediately, tension in his voice. "No. I haven't been bitten. I haven't been near any infected since we came down here. It's just a rash." But over the next few days, the rash spread, up her arm, across her shoulder, onto her chest. In the brief moments when we had light, we could see it and grey-red patches, some areas weeping clear fluid. "It's a fungal infection," Sarah said, trying to stay calm. "Or bacterial. From the dampness down here, the constant moisture, the lack of hygiene, my immune system is compromised from malnutrition. We had antibiotics in our meager medical kit. She took them, but the infection continued spreading. By day 60, it covered most of her upper body. She was feverish, weak, in pain. "I need to go to the surface," she said during a group discussion. "I need real medical care. I'm dying down here." "We're all dying down here," Rodriguez said, not unkindly. "But going up alone is suicide. The surface is crawling with infected, and we don't even know if there are any hospitals still functioning. So I just wait here and rot." Nobody had an answer for that. Sarah's condition deteriorated over the next week. The infection spread to her face. Her breathing became labored. The infection was in her lungs. Now, she was dying, and we couldn't do anything except make her as comfortable as possible in the darkness. She died on day 6. We found her in the morning, or what we thought was morning. We'd lost track of actual time, cold and still. We moved her body to one of the side passages, sealed it off, said words over her in the darkness. Rodriguez tried to do a proper service, but his voice cracked halfway through and we finished in silence. 7 of us left, and we'd learned that the tunnels could kill you in ways that had nothing to do with infected or starvation. The environment itself was deadly. The dampness, the lack of hygiene, the constant exposure to mold and bacteria. We were all probably infected with something. It was just a question of which of us would succumb first. Day 70 brought another collapse. We felt it more than heard it. A vibration through the rock, then a rumble, then a sound like thunder that went on for 30 seconds. Dust rained from the ceiling, small rocks and debris fell. We covered our heads and waited for the tunnel to cave in on top of us. It didn't, but when the shaking stopped, we could tell something had changed. The air felt different, was moving differently. Rodriguez organized a scouting party. Tommy and I went with him. We navigated through the darkness to the main tunnel system, the one that led back toward the blocked vertical shaft. We found the collapse about halfway there. The tunnel had caved in completely, a wall of rubble blocking the passage. But there was a gap at the top, maybe 2 feet high, where the ceiling had held, even though the walls had failed. "Can we get through?" I asked. Rodriguez felt the gap. Maybe if you're thin enough, and if the whole thing doesn't collapse on you while you're squeezing through. We need to know what's on the other side, Tommy said. Could be our escape route is blocked. Could be we have a new way out. I volunteered to try. I was probably the thinnest of us at this point. Months of starvation had reduced me to skin and bones. I climbed up the rubble pile in the darkness, feeling my way, found the gap, started squeezing through. It was tight, terrifyingly tight. I had to exhale completely to make my chest small enough to fit. Had to pull myself forward with my fingernails while rocks scraped my back and chest. For a moment I got stuck, couldn't move forward or backward. Panic flooded through me. I was going to die here, wedged in a gap in the rubble, 150 feet underground in complete darkness, unable to move, unable to breathe properly, slowly suffocating. I forced myself to calm down, exhaled even more, pulled with my arms, pushed with my toes, scraped skin off my ribs, but moved forward an inch. Then another inch, then I was through, tumbling down the other side of the rubble pile, landing hard on the tunnel floor beyond. I'm through, I called back. What do you see? Rodriguez's voice was muffled by the rubble between us. I laughed bitterly. I don't see anything. It's pitch black, but I could feel the air moving, and I could hear something water. Running water. I followed the sound. The tunnel continued for maybe 50 feet before it opened into a larger space. I could tell by the echo, and the sound of water was louder here. Not a drip or a trickle. Actual flowing water. I felt my way to the edge. Found water. A lot of water. It was flowing past, moving with current, an underground stream or river, or more likely, a flooded section of the maintenance tunnel system. The bombing had probably ruptured water mains, and the water had found its way down here, pooling in the lower sections. The water was cold. I dipped my hand in, tasted it. It was fresh. Not salt water, probably from city water mains. Drinkable. I made my way back through the rubble gap, reported what I'd found. Fresh water source, Rodriguez said. That's good. We were getting low. But flooded tunnels means our escape routes are even more limited. Over the next few days, we developed a system. The thinnest members would squeeze through the gap to access the water on the other side. We'd fill containers, pass them back through, and have fresh water in our base. But the flooding was getting worse. Each time someone went through, they reported the water level had risen. It started at ankle depth. Within a week it was knee, then waist deep. The whole tunnel system is flooding, Rodriguez said during a meeting on day 7. Water's coming in faster than it's draining. If it reaches our section, we'll have to evacuate or drown. Evacuate where? Someone asked. We're sealed in. The shaft is blocked. The cave system Marcus found is our only exit. Then we go through the cave system, Rodriguez said. All of us. We reach the surface, take our chances up there because we can't stay down here, but we waited. We were still scared of the surface, still hoping that somehow rescue would come, that the flooding would stop, that we'd find another option. Day 79. We heard something that changed everything. It came from the tunnel system, from the direction of the flooding, a sound we hadn't heard in months. Voices. Human voices, not the hallucinations we'd been experiencing. Real voices, calling out, echoing through the tunnels. Hello, is anyone down here? We're rescue workers. If you can hear us, respond. We all froze, looked at each other in the darkness, unable to see, but feeling each other's shock. Did you hear that? Tommy whispered. Hello. Rodriguez shouted back. We're here. We're trapped. We need help. Silence. Then, we hear you. Where are you? What's your vocation? Rodriguez tried to explain, told them we were in an abandoned construction section beneath the 7-line extension, accessed through a now blocked vertical shaft, approximately 150 feet below street level. More silence. Then, we can't reach you from our current position. The tunnels are flooded, but we're marking your location. We'll try to dig down from the surface. It might take days or weeks. Can you survive that long? We'll try. Rodriguez shouted back. Hang on. Help is coming. We heard their voices moving away, fading, then silence. Hope exploded through our group for the first time in months. Rescue is coming. Real rescue. We just had to hold on a little longer. But day 80 brought a harsh reality. The water had reached our section, that it started as seepage through cracks in the rock, then a trickle, then a flow. Within hours, there was an inch of water on the floor of our base chamber. Cold water, rising steadily. We can't wait for rescue, Rodriguez said. The flooding is going to kill us before they can dig down. We evacuate now. Through the cave system. Everyone, no discussion. We gathered what little supplies we had left, prepared for the climb through the darkness to the surface. 7 of us starving, weak, but alive, and we were going to stay that way. The journey through the cave system took 6 hours. We moved single file, holding onto each other in the darkness, navigating by touch and memory. Some passages were now partially flooded. We had to wade through cold water in the dark, hoping we didn't lose our footing. 2 people didn't make it. One slipped in the flooded section. When under, we tried to find them in the darkness, but the current was too strong. We heard them being swept away, their screams fading into the distance. Another had a heart attack during the climb, through the narrow fissure to the surface. The stress, the malnutrition, the physical exertion, it was too much. They collapsed halfway up. We couldn't get them down. We couldn't revive them. We had to leave them wedged in the rock. 5 of us emerged into Central Park on day 80, into grey afternoon light, into fresh air, into a world that had moved on without us. The journey to Battery Park took 12 days. We lost 2 more people to infected attacks and 2 injuries from a fall while navigating through a collapsed building. 2 of us reached Governor's Island, myself and Rodriguez, out of 12 people who'd gone into those tunnels on day 1, to survive to tell the story. I want to tell you about the things we did in the darkness that we never talked about afterward. The things Rodriguez and I don't discuss even now, 6 months later, when we see each other in the Governor's Island settlement. The things that happen when you're 150 feet underground, in absolute darkness with no hope and no future and hunger eating you from the inside. Day 63 was when we started considering cannibalism. We didn't call it that at first. We talked around it, used euphemisms, but we all knew what we were discussing, that Sarah had just died. Her body was in the side passage, still fresh. We had maybe 3 days of food left if we were lucky. We were already eating rats when we could catch them, which wasn't often. We were starving to death, slowly but surely. Someone, I won't say who, because it doesn't matter now, voiced what we were all thinking. Sarah's body. It's just meat, protein, calories. She's dead. She doesn't need it anymore. The silence that followed was absolute. Even our breathing seemed to stop. No, Rodriguez said finally. We're not doing that. We're still human. We maintain our humanity, or we're no better than the infected. The infected aren't starving to death in the dark. The same voice countered. They're surviving. We're dying. Sarah would understand. She'd want us to live. The debate went on for hours. Some agreed we should do whatever it took to survive. Others argued that crossing that line would destroy us psychologically, that we'd be giving up the last thing that made us human. In the end, Rodriguez made the decision. No, we don't touch Sarah's body. That's final. Anyone who disobeys will be expelled from the group. We didn't touch her body, but the fact that we'd seriously discussed it, that we'd debated the morality of eating our dead friend, that some of us had actually wanted to do it, that knowledge hung over us in the darkness like a weight. I think about it sometimes. Wonder if we'd made the other choice, would more of us have survived? Would the extra calories from Sarah's body have given us the strength to make it through those final weeks? Or would it have broken something essential in us, turned us into monsters even if we'd reached the surface alive? I don't know, and I'm grateful I don't have to know. Day 70 was when Rodriguez started planning our deaths. He didn't announce it, but I figured it out. We were talking in the darkness during one of our meal times. What little food we had left when he casually mentioned the location of the maintenance supplies. There's rope in the equipment locker, he said. Strong rope, rated for heavy loads. Why are you telling us this? I asked. Silence then, in case anyone needs options. I understood. He was telling us where to find materials for hanging ourselves, giving us the option of a quick death instead of the slow starvation that was coming. We're not there yet, I said firmly. We're not giving up. I'm not saying we give up, Rodriguez replied. I'm saying we should have choices. Dying slowly of starvation is one of the worst ways to go. Your body consumes itself, eats your muscles, your organs, your brain. You go insane before you die. Some people might prefer a quicker way out. He was right, but I refused to accept it. We find another option. The cave system. Remember, I found the fissure. We can reach the surface. If we have the strength to make the climb, Rodriguez said. Every day we wait, we get weaker. There might come a point where we're too weak to escape, even if the path is there. That scared me more than anything. The idea that we'd found an escape route but would be too starved and weak to use it. That we'd die with freedom literally within reach but unreachable. On day 71, I heard someone in the darkness, moving around during what should have been sleep time. I heard them go to the equipment locker, heard the sound of rope being handled. I followed the sounds, found them by touch in the darkness. It was Tommy. What are you doing? I asked quietly. I can't do this anymore, Marcus, he said. His voice was broken. defeated. I can't live in this darkness. I can't keep starving. I can't keep hearing my family's voices calling me. I just want it to be over. I took the rope from his hands. No, not like this. We're getting out. We're escaping. I found the way to the surface. In just a few more days, we're going up. You just have to hold on. What if there is no surface anymore? Tommy asked. What if the bombing destroyed everything? What if we climb up there and it's just more death? Then at least we tried, I said. At least we died fighting instead of giving up in the dark. I don't know if my words helped, but Tommy didn't try to hang himself that night. He made it to day 80 with the rest of us. Made it to the surface. He was one of the ones who died during the journey to Battery Park. Infected got him on day 8, but he died in daylight, under the sky, fighting, not hanging from a rope in the darkness. Day 75 brought the final test of our humanity. The water was rising in our chamber, already ankle deep and getting higher. We'd moved our supplies to the highest point in the chamber, but that wouldn't help if the flooding continued. We needed to evacuate soon, or drown. But one person, I'll call him Jones because I don't remember his real name now, was too weak to move. He'd been sick for days with what we thought was the same infection that had killed Sarah. Fever, weakness, barely conscious most of the time. We can't carry him through the cave system, someone said. The passages are too narrow. He can't walk on his own. If we try to help him, we'll all move too slowly and get trapped by the flooding, so we leave him. I asked. We leave him, Rodriguez confirmed, or we all die trying to save him. Jones was conscious enough to understand what we were discussing. He spoke from the darkness, his voice weak. Leave me. I'm dead anyway. Don't die for me. Just make it quick, please. We debated for an hour. Some argued we should try to carry him anyway, that we couldn't abandon him to drown slowly in the dark. Others argued that saving one person wasn't worth losing everyone. Rodriguez made the final decision. We give him a choice. Jones, we can leave you here with some water and supplies. You'll probably drown when the water rises, but it might be quick. Or we can end it now, painlessly. Your choice. Now, Jones said without hesitation. Please now. I won't describe how we did it, but it was fast. And then we left his body in the rising water and moved on. 7 people becoming 6. Survival demanding sacrifices that would haunt us forever. These are the things we don't talk about. The moral compromises. The choices that had no good options. The moments where we had to decide what line we wouldn't cross and what lines we would. Rodriguez and I never discussed the cannibalism debate after we reached the surface. Never mentioned Jones. Never talked about Tommy trying to hang himself. These things existed only in the darkness of those tunnels. In memories we both carried but refused to acknowledge. But I think about them. Late at night, when I can't sleep despite the lights I keep on, I think about every choice we made down there. Every decision that kept us alive or killed someone else. Every moment where humanity and survival pulled in opposite directions. Day 80, the day we finally escaped to the surface, should have been a triumph, and it was, but it was also the day we had to face what we'd become. What the darkness had made us stop. The climb through the cave system was worse than I remembered. The passages seemed narrower, the climbs steeper, and we were so much weaker than when I'd first explored this route days earlier. We had to stop every few minutes to rest, had to help each other through tight spots, had to talk each other through moments of panic. When the claustrophobia became overwhelming, we lost Sarah, not the dead Sarah we'd left behind, but another woman also named Sarah, different person in the flooded section. She slipped on wet rocks in the darkness, went under. The current was stronger than we'd anticipated, probably fed by broken water mains throughout the city. We heard her shouting for help, heard her being swept away into some underground channel we couldn't see or reach. Then silence. 6 became 5. We lost Rodriguez, the Rodriguez who wasn't the crew chief. Confusing, I know. But there were 2 of them to a heart attack during the final climb through the narrow fissure to the surface. The stress was too much. He clutched his chest, made a choking sound, and died wedged in the rock. We couldn't get him down, couldn't do anything but whisper apologies and keep climbing. 5 became 4 when we emerged into Central Park's gray afternoon light, when we breathed fresh air for the first time in 80 days. When we felt rain on our faces and wind in our hair. We should have celebrated, but we were too exhausted, too traumatized. It's too fundamentally changed by what we'd endured. We sat in the overgrown grass of Central Park, for skeletal figures who barely looked human anymore, and we didn't speak. What was there to say? The journey to Battery Park took 12 days because we were too weak to move quickly. We covered maybe half a mile per day, hiding during daylight, scavenging what we could, avoiding infected, On day 83, infected cornered us in a narrow alley off 5th Avenue. They came from both ends, cutting off escape. We fought with pipes and rocks in desperation. Tommy went down first, they pulled him away from us, and we heard his screams fade as they dragged him into a building. We ran while they were distracted. 4 became 3. On day 87, we were crossing through a collapsed building when the floor gave way. One of the others, I'm ashamed to say, I don't remember their name now, fell through to the basement level. We heard them hit, heard them calling for help, but the floor was too unstable to risk climbing down. We called down that we'd get help, that we'd send someone back. We never went back. Couldn't the building collapse completely the next day? If they weren't dead from the fall, they were dead from the collapse. 3 became 2. Rodriguez, crew chief Rodriguez, the one who'd led us, who'd made the impossible decisions, who'd kept us alive, and I made it to Battery Park on day 92, 2 people out of 12, an 83% fatality rate. The military at Battery Park almost shot us when we appeared. We looked like infected, emaciated, filthy, moving with the shambling gait of starvation. They held us at gunpoint until we could prove we were human, that we could speak coherently, that we understood complex instructions. The quarantine was 72 hours in isolation. They fed us carefully, our bodies couldn't handle normal food anymore. Too much too fast would kill us. They gave us IV fluids, medical care, counseling, though we refused to talk about the tunnels. On day 95 we were cleared and transported to Governor's Island. The safe zone was everything we'd hoped for. Walls, security, food production, a functioning community. We'd made it, we'd survived, but survival came at a cost. I'm not the same person I was before the tunnels, neither is Rodriguez. We have scars that aren't visible, damage that can't be healed. I can't be in complete darkness anymore. Even sleeping requires a light on. Total darkness triggers panic attacks so severe I've passed out. My brain remembers the 86 days underground and refuses to accept darkness as safe. I have conversations with dead people. I know they're not real. I know it's my brain continuing the pattern it learned in the tunnels. But I hear my sister's voice sometimes, clear as day, calling my name. Hear Tommy asking if we're going to make it. Hear Sarah screaming as she's swept away by the current. I dream about the tunnels every night. Dream about being back in the darkness. Dream about the water rising. Dream about being trapped in the narrow fissure, unable to move forward or back, slowly suffocating in the rock. Rodriguez has his own demons. He won't talk about them, but I see the signs. The way he flinches at loud noises. The way he checks and rechecks, exits wherever he goes. The way he hoards food even though the settlement has plenty. The way he sometimes stares at nothing, clearly somewhere else, somewhere dark. We're the only 2 who know the full story. Everyone else who was there is dead. The things we did, the choices we made, the people we left behind. Lee Rodriguez and I carry those memories, and we'll carry them until we die. Sometimes I wonder if we should go back, not to the tunnels, I'll never go back there, but to tell the story properly, to admit what we did, to confess the moral compromises we made. But what good would that do? The dead stay dead regardless of whether we confessed. The people we left behind don't care about our guilt. They're gone. All that's left is us, the survivors, carrying the weight of their deaths. I'm writing this 6 months after reaching Governor's Island. 6 months of safety and regular meals and therapy, and trying to reintegrate into a functioning society. 6 months of pretending I'm okay, but I'm not okay. I don't think I'll ever be okay. Part of me died in those tunnels. Part of me is still down there, in the absolute darkness, 150 feet below Manhattan, listening to voices that aren't there and feeling the weight of the earth pressing down. I survived 180 days during the zombie apocalypse. 86 of those days were spent underground in complete darkness. I endured starvation, isolation, sensory deprivation, moral compromise, and the deaths of 10 people who trusted me to help them survive. I made it out alive, but survival isn't the same as living. I exist now. I eat and sleep and perform the functions of life. But something essential was left behind in those tunnels. Something I'll never get back. If you're hearing this, you still have daylight. You still have the sky. You still have the simple gift of being able to see your own hands in front of your face. Don't ever take it for granted, because I know what it's like to lose it. I know what absolute darkness does to the human mind. I know the things you become when survival is all that matters. The tunnels are still down there beneath Manhattan. The bodies we left behind are still there. The darkness is still there, waiting. And part of me, the part that knows things I wish I didn't know, that did things I wish I hadn't done, is still there too. I escaped the tunnels, but the tunnels never escaped me. If this story made you think about darkness, about survival at any cost, about the price of staying human when the world ends, hit that subscribe button. This story was based on real NYC subway maintenance tunnel layouts, real survival scenarios, real psychological effects of sensory deprivation. Drop a comment. Could you survive 180 days underground in complete darkness? Would you have made the same choice as we did? What's the longest you've gone without seeing light? I read every comment. Your stories matter. If you made it through the full 3 hours, you understand something about endurance that most people don't. You have the patience and strength to see things through to the end. That's rare. That's valuable. Next story drops next week. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss it. Stay in the light. Stay above ground. And remember, the darkness beneath the city is deeper than you think, and some of us who went down there never fully came back up. Thanks for listening. It means more than you know.